Welcome to a special episode of Thriving in Construction, the podcast, where we have the pleasure of hosting a dynamic and accomplished leader. She has dedicated her career to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, and has become an expert in advancing critical efforts to build better and more inclusive organizations with over 16 years of association experience. Her unwavering passion and success in the field have earned her numerous awards and accolades, including the prestigious Maryland Minority Contractors Association's Professional Commitment Award and the Diversity Executive Leadership Program Scholarship by American Society of Association Executives. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest for today, my dear friend, Tia Perry, Director of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity at Associated Builder Contractors, ABC, and member of Executive Management Team. So much for joining our podcast. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Thank you for what you do. I've known you for probably the last 6 years, and it's been always a pleasure. I always see you how passionate and devoted you are for diversity and inclusion. So first of all, thank you for being here. Welcoming you with my heart. Introduce yourself to our listeners, because I know they're going to be super excited for what you have to say. There's so much passion into inclusion and diversity and equity in your DNA. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you so much, Patricia and the Lunacon family. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story and to talk about, some of my passions. I'm passionate for obvious reasons, but I've really fallen in love with the opportunity to diversify our industry that we all love so much, make it more inclusive and more equitable. And I am the Director of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity for the Associated Builders and Contractors. And for the listeners who may not be familiar with ABC, we are a construction commercial trade association representing 21,000 merit shop contractors, associates, and suppliers. And I lead our inclusion, diversity, and equity initiatives, working really closely with our chapters as our strategic thought leader. As you can imagine, we have 68 chapters, and our chapters are really all over the spectrum. There's some that are really sophisticated that have a D&I committee and they're really active in this vertical. And then there's some that are really in the infancy stage and really, just trying to understand the business case and why this is important. And so in my role, I work uniquely with those chapters to help them develop their strategies, helping our member companies to develop best practices, and really have, again, fallen in love with just the passion behind, the individuals that I support in this industry and why it's so very important.
Yes, Tia, I don't want to assume everyone understands the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we have a few episodes already that we have recorded with other people that are passionate about the subject, but they're not necessarily on the role that you are, especially with an association. Could you please expand on what does it mean? Why is it important? How is it a thing? Why are we hearing more and more and more about diversity and inclusion, especially these times? Because many really large companies are having a specific focus on that, and it's very driven more than it has ever been.
Absolutely. You'll notice I start with inclusion, diversity, followed by equity. And our national committee we have a national IDE committee that supports the efforts. The committee, they're really the stakeholders and the subject matter experts for the supplier diversity and all those things. And, there was a lot of intentionality about us leading with the word inclusion. And the reason for that is because diversity does not stick without inclusion. Inclusion is really a feeling of belonging and really valuing differences to achieve superior results. It's a feeling where everyone feels like they have a seat at the table, they're welcome, they're valued, they're respected, and they're included. And it's really fostering that sense of belonging in the workplace and on the job site. And diversity is really a variety of abilities, skills, backgrounds, nationalities, and experiencing, and really actively seeking diverse stakeholders to really achieve superior results. Diversity of thought, I mean, there's numerous studies about the importance of diversity and how a diverse team is more innovative and more creative and more profitable. And so I challenge the listeners to, I think McKinsey has a great survey recently, or survey findings study about the importance of diversity and the data behind it. And then equity for me is about providing opportunities for everyone and really identifying what challenges may be in place, what obstacles, to really help everyone be successful in the construction industry, to level the playing field so that everyone has the opportunity to compete and be successful. So that's how we define it at ABC. I'm assuming everyone's different, depending on, their experience with ID and E, but that's how we explain it at ABC.
And I like that concept because in general, in practical terms, for me, we're all one. We're all under one creation. There's really not that concept. I'm Christian, so, and I respect everybody's faith, but we all love each other. Don't judge. So that means no one is better than anyone, and we're all one. And we all contribute to each other in different ways. And so on that note, to me, that when leadership has that concept, that it comes also with compassion. Mm-hmm. And that has to be very uplifting in any organization, because nothing is linear. Mm-hmm. People's lives you go through ups and downs, but if you allow someone to be lifted when they're down, and we all do it to each other, the power is in that union, right? How do you see it?
Absolutely. I see it the same exact way. And I think it's all about loving thy neighbor. And regardless of like your religious beliefs, that's just the right thing to do, right? To treat someone with respect and dignity, to give everyone an opportunity. So I absolutely agree. Organizations should invest in a culture that really fosters a sense of belonging, right? And I think there'll be an amazing return on that investment, right? So just ensure that their culture is healthy and that folks have the opportunity to thrive.
Now, you touch on a subject of culture, and the day somebody decides, well, you know what, this leadership, let's say there's a company changes leadership, or just the owner has an awakening, right? You know what, this is like our industry, it's about people. We're really in the industry of building people. We cannot do anything without people. I mean, I know there's robotics, and I saw one the other day that it's pretty amazing, but at the end of the day, it's a people business, right? And so how do you say now, well, we're going to have a focus on diversity and inclusion, and this is going to be important, and we're going to measure it. How do you drive that culture? Number one, and it depends on your resources. And what have you seen? What could you recommend to our listeners if they wanted to take that initiative?
Yeah, so I'll start with a really great course that I took back in 2020, and it's by the University of South Florida, and it's DE&I and the workplace. And it's an online work at your own pace. I highly recommend it for anyone, any HR professionals, any of the talent managers. And it's really about, again, hitting home and driving that sense of culture, leading with empathy, and really trying to put yourself in the shoes of your employees, to be empathetic to their needs and their challenges. And so that course, University of South Florida, it's DE&I in the workplace, was really successful for me, just to give me that those best practices to continue to learn and grow. And so that was another great one. Another great resource for our industry is Construction Inclusion Week. ConstructionInclusionWeek.com has a wealth of resources. There's a library, there's an entire day devoted to inclusion and belonging. There's best practices and TED Talks, and there's a really great library of resources on Construction Inclusion Week. So there's a lot of great resources out there. And we're also building at ABC, we're building our Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Academy, which is our online learning academy to really meet the needs of the industry. What we know, Patricia, in full transparency, is a lot of our members really struggle with, where do I begin? How do I evaluate my culture? What resources are available? What are some best practices? And so ABC is developing an IDE Academy that's full of best practices and TED Talks, small business studies, and all these things to really support the industry in advancing inclusion, diversity, and equity.
Oh, that's actually very nice. I'm glad you guys are doing that.
Yeah.
Because it has a lot to do with everyone's perspective, right? And culture is the way of being of a group of humans. Mm-hmm. It's not that you are from a country and there's a lot, and you can even have a culture in your own family. You could be from the same community, and every family has a culture. It's the way we behave in an organization is the same, and a lot of times changing culture it's got to be one of the hardest things to do, because you could decide something, but organizations have a life. And everyone contributes to it. So I'm glad you guys are doing that and being a leader in the influencing and the thoughts and behavior of people that join of the industry, actually.
Absolutely. I would just add that I think it's important to start with an evaluation of your culture. Like, be sure that you are interviewing your employees, your longstanding employees that have been there for a long time, the new folks with onboarding, have that open door policy. They feel comfortable, and I'm sure you have this, but they feel comfortable coming to their supervisor to say, hey, I have some concerns. I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. Really have that transparency and that open door policy with everyone across your workforce. But there is definitely a need for that. And so I'm really excited to launch our academy.
Now there's the part where you have your organization internal issues, right? Mm-hmm. You also, and obviously the larger the company, the more challenging it is because you have more people. But when you are trying to market as a small business and trying to introduce yourself and promote your company, and how do you see it from a perspective of a woman, of a diverse, a person that is, it's called minority? You're less, you're not in the same, you don't belong to the good old boy network.
So I think it's important that you continue to sharpen your saw as a small business, right? Whatever your niche is, however you differentiate yourself from the industry, but to continue to build on that, right? And so something that comes to mind is cybersecurity, right? And how we're all struggling, and there's been lots of data breaches, and, be sure that your technology is state of the art or for whatever you can afford, but really just invest into your organization and your company, right? Don't lead with the fact that I'm an MBE. If I were an MBE, lead with the fact that, hey, I'm the best HVAC subcontractor in the state of Virginia, and this is why. And I'm also an MBE and a WBE. And it's important to really, another thing that we're working on is our best practices around supplier diversity, and really reframing how we think about supplier diversity, but it's really economic inclusion. It's really about diversifying our supply chain, supporting our small businesses, and ultimately supporting our communities. And so I think it's about differentiating yourself, sharpen your saw, have that, be confident in your elevator pitch and what your capabilities are, and then go out and sell yourself. I think that's what it's all about.
And at the end of the day, people ask me, how do you do it in a male dominated industry? And I say, I never really have those thoughts when I'm selling, or I'm never thinking I'm a woman. That's not what I think. So really the only thing we can control is what we think, how we feel, how we act, what we do. We can't control what other people think. I'll tell you something else. My experience I have been here in this industry for 33 years. There might be a bias initially, but it takes no time for people to really understand when there's value and appreciate it also.
Yeah,
So that I've noticed, it never becomes the obstacle, right?
that's
Unless it stays in your head.
yeah. No, that's great that you haven't, experienced that, and that you have that confidence to.
Well, not that I haven't experienced, but you're not gonna drill a hole in somebody's head to bring that out. Does that make sense? So
Absolutely.
you might sense something, but if you have that certainty about yourself, it takes no time for the person to actually recognize and embrace you just like anyone else.
Yeah,
It's just that
absolutely.
it's communicating. I think of the inclusion. We miss out many times by our mindset, our beliefs. We miss out. We It's what we don't speak about.
Hmm.
How can we be diverse? So now the company took the initiative and we have diversity, but how can I be included? How can my ideas be included if I don't speak about them? And
Absolutely.
and the forum might be open, but if I stay close as an individual, then we both need to be open to that thought. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. And you hit on communication, right? Just so very important on both sides, right? Communicating your capabilities, the expectations. That is the key. Communication is the key in anything, but that's so very important with any of your business partners.
So I've been in different organizations, in different boards, and one of them was the Army Corps of Engineers. Obviously, many male generals and military personnel, but I'm pretty open and outspoken. Sometimes I'm trying not to speak too much. And I remember, I just remember a conversation. It was a brainstorming session, and I tend to have a lot of ideas. I say an idea, it is kind of ignored, okay, it is kind of ignored, and then 15 minutes later, this military person says the same thing, but he says he doesn't acknowledge that it came from me. And it's so funny because I had my brain, I'm like, that's what I
Like, I
said.
just said that. I just said that. Right.
So I say, hey, I just said that. And it was so funny. He laughed and then he acknowledged. Sometimes you claim it, right? And that's part of the. Sometimes people are not trained to listen, and because it hasn't happened before. Does that it's
Yeah.
not that it's a conscious decision not to ignore an idea from another person that they're not accustomed to dealing with.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times that acknowledgement is not that they don't acknowledge you, but it's not a habit.
Yeah. I think like listening to understand and not to respond. Like listen to really understand that point came from Patricia, but everyone in the room wasn't as receptive from what Patricia had to say as they were someone else, right? So I get what you're saying, just active listening. And I know it sounds so elementary, but I think it
But it's not.
goes over a lot of people's head. It's like just listen, right? Don't interrupt, just listen to what I'm saying first. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
It's funny, but that's how we also a way to contribute, to be certain about what you believe and
Mhm.
speak up, right? It's let me ask you something, changing a little bit. What made you so passionate about diversity and inclusion? Because
It's
because
actually a great
you
question.
have the position, but you you embrace it with a level of passion and determination with every single cell in your body, that there's got to be something big behind that.
It's interesting that you asked that. And I actually, for the longest time as a professional, I graduated high school, graduated college, I got a job really quickly, and I was still trying to find myself, right? And so I was in membership sales and business development, but not really feeling fulfilled or passionate about the work that I do. And I was really blessed that a short time after starting at ABC, Mike Belliman, ABC's president and CEO, asked if I was interested in leading our D&I efforts. To be completely honest, Patricia, in the beginning, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be the one of the people of color advocating. I knew it was going to be a heavy lift. I just started a new job, and I was like, let me think about it. So Mike and I had a conversation, and after I knew that Mike was completely committed, genuinely committed to this, I decided to move forward and take on our D&I role, D&I duties. And that really evolved to a full-time career. And so in a full-time role at ABC. And what keeps burning my passion is the success stories of the Dantes from our Community Builders program, Project Hood, and our Chicago chapter, and how Dante graduated high school not knowing what he wanted to do. He found ABC Illinois, sorry. They trained him. He's now an apprentice, making really good money. He's changed his life. He's providing for his families and his family. And I see and I hear these stories of these young adults, and even Tina, who was a 60-year-old, African-American electrician. She was a CNA, and she's transitioned to the industry, and the love for the industry. And I think about when I was younger, before ABC, and I would hear the word construction, I had this innocent ignorance. I associated construction with just ditch digging and just the dirty side of it. And that's absolutely so very important. And I commend those people who do that work. But I didn't understand the technology, the innovation, the BIM, the project management side of it. And so prior to ABC, I probably wouldn't have encouraged a career in construction for my teenager who's in high school. I would be like, no, you got to go to college. Now I'm like, you know what, Josiah, if you go to high school, you complete high school, and college isn't for you, there are amazing opportunities in construction. There is a worker shortage of 650,000 workers that are needed in our industry. You'll have no student loan debt. Like, I can help place you with an ABC member company. I just hear about these success stories and how I can use my influence to really to help these folks. And so it's really kept me going, are these stories that these folks that have come to ABC chapters that I've worked with, and they've been placed with ABC member companies, and they're able to provide for their families. And so that's really where my passion comes from.
Wow. We have similar passions. We also started an effort, Lunacon Academy, and our foundation actually is dedicated to training people in construction, that we can give them an opportunity as we, and I know it's transformative. It's been for me, although I started from the, university side, but my partner, Emilio, started in the industry as a laborer. So I have seen it firsthand, what this industry can do. And, it's transformative.
Absolutely. There's an amazing opportunities. If you work hard, there's just so many opportunities. And I feel like it's my responsibility to share that with everyone, especially diverse individuals, right? Especially those that look like you and I, Black and brown people. For me, that's where my passion, it's my responsibility to advocate for a career in construction, because if I didn't know growing up, I'm sure a lot of people don't.
Yeah, no, and it still is the case. This is why we started this podcast, because many people don't know. And you have no idea how many people, especially women, and the possibility for women in our industry is huge. And that's part of inclusion and diversity, right? When you are able to give a perspective, even having this podcast is probably because I'm a woman that I think about these things. And it just helps have a different perspective. I learned a lot from people that are not like me, or that grew up in another country. You know, you even learn about food that people, different food elements. It's beautiful to watch.
Absolutely. Like, I think it's so important to really include people from different walks of life, right? I think about our disabilities community. I think about our LGBTQ community, African American, our women, our Asians, our Asian American, our Hispanics. And I think about, just the melting pot of the ideas and the innovation that comes out of those conversations when it's a diverse team and everyone has something different to contribute.
And to echo on that, not only it's about the gender or where we're coming from, but it's also the age.
Yes.
We're in an era where most baby boomers are exiting the industry, the work life. In our industry, they have been the heroes in our industry. Mm-hmm. The baby boomers. Now replacing that group of people is being a challenge for us. But not only is a challenge because of the number of people, but it's also the knowledge. Remember, I told you the sharing of the knowledge. It hasn't been a thing in our industry. So it is a beautiful opportunity to marry the wisdom with the new generation. And it's something that I see in our own company, because the knowledge that we have, we can share it with the new generation and help them bridge that gap faster. They don't have they don't have to wait as many years. As we learn as they go, we can shorten that time frame and our industry can evolve. That's part of inclusion also, and diversity is the fruits of that. It could be, how do you see it?
I see exactly how you just explained. And I also think about I think that's where the equity piece comes in too, because I think about millennials and I think about baby boomers, and I think about all these different generations of people and how their unique needs. So the millennials are they're gonna want that work from home, that telework option, that flexibility, where, some of their, old school folks have been in the workforce a little bit longer, somewhat struggle with that flexibility. And, and I think if there was one positive from the pandemic, it's that, our work life has changed, right? Prior to COVID, we didn't really work from home. Like, what was Zoom? Like, we somewhat used Zoom. What was Microsoft Teams? Like, we have no idea. So I think, that diversity of generations and is so very important, diversity of age and mindset and those perspectives together. Absolutely. I completely agree with you.
So tell me something, where does your resilience comes from?
Oh, my resilience. I had really great parents to start. I had a really great foundation, and I'm very, very thankful for that faith-based foundation. I grew up in the church, going to church, Bible study. I have parents who are strong believers, and they've really instilled that into me. And I think about the level of resilience, the work diversity can be uncomfortable and it can be a really heavy lift. And I really try and continue to move forward with just little small incremental wins. But I gotta say, it's all faith-based. It's all from my relationship with God, my devotion, my prayer. That's what keeps me level-minded. That's what keeps my mental health healthy, working out. And I had a great foundation, and I'm very, very, very grateful for that.
What has been the biggest challenge that you have had to confront in this industry, and how have you overcome it?
I think the biggest challenge for me is really reframing how folks think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, as an industry, when a lot of folks hear the word diversity, DE&I, ID and E, however you want to put it, I think they immediately think about affirmative action and set asides and, there's these project requirements that I can't fulfill and I can't find a bona fide subcon, whatever. And really not thinking about the importance of why not only is this the right thing to do, but how it can make your businesses more innovative and more creative. And for me, it's just that paradigm shift of how folks think about ID and E. And I said originally I want to change hearts and minds, right? And I learned pretty early on that's going to be it's difficult to change hearts and minds, right? It's easier for me to change processes, to look at from a lens of an industry lens and say like, hey, you know, this is our workforce development efforts. We need to embed inclusivity into that. We look at our safety efforts. We need to think about how we think about mental health and total human health. That's reframe about physical safety. It's mental health as well. And I think about those pillars of ABC strategic plan. And the challenging part is really changing people's perspective of, you know, how their perception of how they think about inclusion, diversity, and equity.
And I mean, I'm the next question I'm going to ask you. I'm speaking from my own experience. When you're trying to change or influence people to change, you change your culture, you know, because you feel where you are is not where you want to be, and you have to include technology. You have to include, you know, instead of having a culture of I'm going to allow everyone to do whatever they want, to a culture of accountability and transparency. Those are very difficult shifts. While you are in operation, meaning you have contracts and you have a person already in charge of a project that might not want to change. And the word resistance shows up constantly. When I say constantly, in a passive aggressive way kind of thing, it's silent.
Yeah.
And so have you faced resistance in this journey, and how has the process transformed you, considering that you are married to the outcome that you have, and how has it who have you become in the process?
It's a great question. So I knew when I took on this role, there would be some adversity, right? And I knew as a new leader for this organization, I knew it was not going to be easy. There's definitely been some challenges with just reframing the way our members think about it. Some uncomfortable conversations about the importance of inclusion, some uncomfortable conversations about that equity piece and how it's about equity of outcomes, right? And giving everyone equity of opportunity, and giving everyone the opportunity to compete on a project and to have a career in construction. And so for me, I think it's just those small incremental wins, right? You know, I have this overarching strategic plan, but for me, it's these little success stories with our apprentices, our inclusion, diversity, and equity sprinkled throughout our entire strategic plan. You know, that historically, this is like year 3 for that. Prior to it has not been incorporated in our entire strategic plan. And I think about that evolution as an association. It's incorporated now into our safety, our total human health initiative. And so I think about those small wins, and that's what's fueled my fire and kept me going, is I'm making a difference, right? And I have this responsibility and this influence, and I take it very seriously. And just those small wins have kept me going, Patricia.
Yeah, what you're saying is, you know what you want, but what has really given you the passion and the drive, it's the why you want to do it. And the why is the transformation that you have seen in these individuals that did not have an opportunity at one point, and now they are flourishing.
Absolutely. And the transformation of our association and our chapters, right? So I think about some chapters to Houston, for example. Brad Lewis and I, the chair of the IDE committee, had a conversation right after George Floyd's murder with our Houston chapter about them wanting to launch a D&I committee. And we had several meetings. And let me tell you, Patricia, in the last 3 years, it has been so successful. They have partnerships with Historical Black Colleges University. Prairie View is competing in their construction management competition. You know, they have a committee of like 50 people, right? Really like the movers and the shakers and And I think about the success of a lot of our chapters and the lives that we're changing with our apprentices, but also our chapters are really intentional with including that into their strategic plan and being very intentional about their outreach efforts. And so that transformation of our association has also been really, really rewarding.
That's and you know what, progress is, it takes time, and that's important. That keeps you going. It's focusing on what you have been able to accomplish as an entity, as an individual. It's really where it's at, because these things take time. It takes time. I also want you to give our listeners a little bit more on information on what are these three pillars in your strategic plan. What are you really stand for as an organization, ABC?
Yeah, so we actually have 4 pillars. So we have membership, which is about recruiting and retaining more diverse members into our association, providing benefits and resources that are really going to give them a great return on their dues investment, right? So you pay membership dues into an association, you want to see what your investment, where's your check going? So really retaining and being inclusive and welcoming to our diverse members and our industry. The second pillar is safety, and that's around our total human health, right? And how we want to come home happier and healthier than when we went out the door. And so that's all around the paradigm of inclusivity and really that sense of belonging. And I know it sounds a little cliche, but really that true sense of belonging, that everyone needs to feel welcome, valued, and appreciated. And really, and the toll that has on their mental health and their physical health, and especially coming out of a pandemic, our industry is plagued with suicide and attempted suicide, and really the correlation with total human health and the role that plays in that. Our third pillar is political advocacy, and that is around lobbying and bills and laws and legislation and how it impacts our members, our small businesses, and all of those things. So it's membership, safety, political advocacy, and workforce development. And workforce development is exactly the stories that we've been talking about, is how do we bridge the worker shortage? How are we as an association attractive to everyone? Are we tapping into underrepresented communities and talent pools that we've, maybe have missed in the past? Are we providing opportunities to certain cities and certain counties and more rural areas as well? And so those are our 4 pillars: membership, safety, political advocacy, and workforce development. And for me, it's around working and within those pillars, but helping to support our chapters. That's, our chapters, the membership with our association is held at the chapter level. The chapters typically are the day-to-day folks interfacing with members and providing our chapters, equipping them with the resources they need to be successful in recruiting diverse members, providing resources and best practices. And so really very high level, that's my role and what our strategic pillars represent.
And you touched on a subject that I am also, when I learned about this, I was like, where have I been that I didn't know this? That our industry, along with mining, is second highest rate in suicide. And so, it's hard to even explain why. Can you elaborate on that?
I wish I knew what the answer was. I don't know. I know that suicide prevention is a huge topic at ABC. It's a huge conversation. We're working on resources to support our member companies and our chapters. I don't know, Patricia. I don't know the correlation on why it's so high in our industry. I do know we have a suicide prevention expert. He's not really an expert. He's Greg Sizemore. He's our Vice President of Health, Safety, and Workforce Development. And he does a lot on suicide prevention. He would be a great speaker if you want to hit a little bit harder. I typically refer folks to him. I'm just not equipped and prepared to talk about why. I wish I knew, but for me, it's about changing that lens about inclusion and the role that it plays in that. And when we foster that true sense of belonging and folks go home happier, healthier, that has got to be, that's got to make a difference and make an impact.
Yeah, totally. And I also want to say that on the mental side, the mindset side, sometimes I think we're getting into an era where it's so important to help others, work on our mindsets and psychology, but also as an organization and culture-wise, to instill a mindset of growth and flexibility and not a fixed mindset. Which is what the industry has had forever. I have been in this industry for 30 years, 40 years. You're not going to tell me what to do, blah, blah, blah. And so, but I believe the pandemic has brought even those opportunities to us of innovating flexibility. And I'm very excited about the future for the construction industry. And I encourage anyone to join. So
me too. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a plug for ABEC chapters, right? If you're interested in getting into the construction industry, you're not really sure where to go or who to call, I encourage your listeners to go to abc.org, find our local ABEC chapter, call the chapter directly and see if they have a pre-apprenticeship or an apprenticeship program. And from there, that's really the pipeline into the industry. There's some great resources at ABEC chapters. Pick up the phone and call them and see what opportunities are available. Because Patricia, you and I, we know it's an amazing industry, and we desperately need talent. And so it's a great place to work.
And IBC has I remember when I started the company, they had a program for emerging contractors. So I was able to afford the membership back then. And I've always been part of it. I'm actually involved in the council and the board, and I have been. And there is a really great place to meet people, like-minded people, and resources, and have fun too, because we have to have fun.
Which chapter are you a member of, Patricia?
The East Coast, not the East Coast, South Florida chapter.
Okay.
But okay. I also had the East Coast because I had a lot of work in Cape Canaveral. So, but South Florida, it has all these on the east side. You guys, it covers a lot. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of great benefits. So if any of the listeners are looking for, maybe they're an established member company or business, subcontractor, contractor, check out ABEC. But if you're a listener and you're interested in a career in construction, getting into the industry, not sure where to begin, find an ABEC chapter. I
absolutely agree. Or continue to listen to our episodes, because we give a lot of information as to what to do, what are the opportunities. So listen to our episodes, and that would be also a good way to learn.
Absolutely. And Patricia's got tons of experience and knowledge and tons of success stories, and she's definitely one to follow for sure.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your company. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you would want to?
I think we covered it. Thank you so much for the conversation. It's great to just talk about my passion and the association and the industry. And I can actually hear just from speaking, like, your passion behind the work that you do to make it a better place for everyone. And so I'm excited for your academy that's coming soon, and more to come. But thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you too.